I believe, Madam Clerk.
Yes, she should be joining us.
Okay.
We're good to, oh, just a second. Rob, could you send Kim an invitation, please?
I guess. I have started the live stream just so everyone's aware, but I'll start the recording once we get going.
She's sitting in the agricultural committee waiting room.
That was so silly. The 2 A's and yeah.
All good.
There we go.
Excellent. Hi, Kim.
Hello.
Okay, so we're ready to begin. So I'm good to go, Rob?
You're good to go.
Excellent, thank you very much. So it's December 15th. This is a meeting of the Affordable Housing Task Force. I would ask if anyone has any pecuniary or other interest to declare. I see shaking heads, meaning no. If one should arise, and I'd ask you to declare it at that time. Item number 2 is the election of a chair. You will all know that in my inaugural speech, I asked that if Councillor McQueen would be willing, and if this committee is also willing, that he take the role of chair. So with that said, Madam Clerk, I'll turn it over to you, but I'm quite prepared to make a nomination for Councillor McQueen or Deputy Warden McQueen as chair of this task force.
Okay, thank you, Warden Hicks. So with that, we do have a vacancy for the chair of the Affordable Housing Task Force, and I would open up the floor to nominations. I note that Warden Hicks has nominated Councillor McQueen. Do we have a seconder for that nomination? Councillor Burley, thank you. Are there any other nominations for chair? Councillor Burley?
I move that nominations are closed.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there anyone opposed to that? Okay. Councillor McQueen, are you willing to be the chair of the Affordable Housing Task Force?
I'd be honored to be chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will confirm your chairmanship and turn the meeting over to you.
Okay, well, I'll call this meeting in, I guess it's been called to order, so I'll take over from that. Thank you very much for my nominator and committee for choosing me as your chair. Do we need a vice chair, Madam Clerk?
We actually already have a vice chair, so that was just the role of chair.
Oh, okay, and the vice chair is Councillor Berlin then, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Tara. Slipped my mind.
That's mine too.
Mine too.
So I was right. Okay. All right. So, okay. Well, then we'll move on with our meeting. And again, welcome everyone. And I will say that I do have somebody looking over my shoulder here, but I thought we need to sort of put a little bit of spirit into the season. So I added my Mr. Snowman here with I think he's got a happy face. Yeah, he's got a happy face. So we're going to have a happy face going into the season. So there we are. Okay, so we'll move into the agenda that has been published. Do we need an approval for the agenda, Madam Chair? It's been there, I guess. I just want to make sure there's no additions or deletions to the agenda. Is that part?
Nope, you're correct. You're good to go. So you're moving right in then to the first report.
Okay, so moving on then, I guess we'll go to Anne Marie, and you're going to bring the first report. Welcome.
Thank you, You'll just need a mover and seconder to put it on the floor.
Oh, that's right. We got to go moved by Councillor Burley and second by Councillor O'Leary. Okay, so it's on the floor. How quick we forget, right? Go ahead, Emery.
Thank you. I am going to share my screen. I did put together a PowerPoint presentation. It doesn't have any new information, but it does have some information for us to follow along, mainly to keep me
On track.
on track. Not. Let me see if I get this right. Okay. So moving on, one of the things that I also added onto the agenda was the Housing and Homelessness Services in Ontario policy brief. I did put in a few slides. We can still talk about it later on in other business if council so wishes, but I thought it gave us a clear overview of what and why we were here as a task force looking at building affordable housing. Just an overview of some of our system managers' responsibilities. As Grey County is the system services manager, we manage the affordable housing units that we ourselves own. We administer funding to our nonprofit housing providers. We manage our wait list for all affordable housing that is available in the county. We provide affordable housing options across our continuum, right from emergency housing to transitional and supportive housing, and then to rent geared to income and affordable. And we also meet complex needs. And to do that, we need to have a local plan that is set by our own community that meets the needs and priorities of our area. And that is through our 10-year housing and homelessness program. I just wanted to mention that Ontario is the only jurisdiction in Canada where housing is actually at the municipal level rather than the provincial level. And that Ontario municipalities are also the primary funder of affordable housing. Some pressures on Ontario's housing system, or as I refer to it, things that keep me up at night, are the increasing costs. Our stock is aging and does require capital repairs. Our operating agreements with our nonprofits are ending, although there is a plan with all of our local nonprofits in order to keep that affordable units in our stock. Affordability, our wait lists are growing, and the acuity of need that people are experiencing is also increasing. Our vacancy rates in the area, along with all of Ontario, are extremely low. Our nonprofits lack the capital to build new housing, and there is a lack of funding stability. So all three levels of government need to fund housing. Allocation based on needs rather than application based is what needs to happen. So in other words, we need funding from the federal, provincial, and our own municipal government that is going to meet the needs according to our local needs. And time limited funding, that's always a concern too when you start up a program and it's only going to run for a couple of years, then what? So looking at those longer term instead of time limited funding programs. Service managers also have, I guess, a more complex system too, because we are subject to over 200 service agreements with all the legacy housing programs that we have. I had a look here, and I think we have about 44 agreements that we work under in Grey County alone. So it can be very difficult, especially for new staff coming on, learning the nuances between all of the different programs. The province is looking at modernization, and I'm hoping that some of these programs will be streamlined along with that modernization. And our service level standards are outdated. Each each service manager is given a number of housing rent geared to income that they have to provide, and often rent supplements and other municipally funded programs are not included in those numbers. So that does need to change too. As I mentioned, the province is looking in conjunction with service manager consultation to modernize our housing system. As primary funders as the service manager is the primary funder, we should be recognized as equal partners. And that's something that we are striving at the provincial tables to make known. We do need to have control over where we're going with our programs, and especially with end of operating agreements with our nonprofits. As a partner, we should have input into where and what's happening next, where we're going, and what funding is required. More action is needed, obviously, to incentivize and stimulate construction of new rentals. Housing affordability has to be recognized and shared as a priority, and funding should be predictable and sustainable. If we are receiving and providing sustainable funding, then we can make a difference in the amount of units that are needed. So next, I'm kind of moving right into my report that is before you. Back in September, at our last meeting of the Affordable Housing Task Force, the committee asked that I bring back a report for consideration, looking at our needs, key assets, and some of the opportunities that might be available for affordable housing to be considered in our 2021 budget. So we did look at different analysis. We looked at our wait list again, looked at the different funding that is available through the province, through the federal government, and also spoke with nonprofits and other proponents about what some of our opportunities might be in the next few years. As an analysis of our wait list, we identified 556 Grey County residents. There are others on our wait list, but in order for us to look at true need, we took a look at ones that have a Grey County address, ones that were in Toronto, Hamilton, other areas. We didn't account for in this list because, you know, Toronto and Hamilton have opportunity and have plans for housing too, so it made more sense. I can also say too that when we do go to offer somebody who is out of the area, they're not always, a lot of the times they don't accept our offer of housing. I think somebody has told them to, you know, get on almost every wait list in Ontario, which makes sense. If I was looking for housing and desperate for housing, I'd be doing the same thing. But, you know, reality a couple of years later, when we're looking at housing, this area may not be right for them. This list of the 556, also there are 52 singles and 16 seniors that did not list an address. And of course, at that point, we are still actually in the process of getting a hold of a lot of them just to see if they are Grey County residents and what their needs are for housing. We do know that there are a lot of local people without an address that are on our wait list, but we're trying to confirm that. 337 of the 556 have an current Owen Sound address. So again, that just speaks to our need of housing in Owen Sound. We have 55 2-bedroom units and 24 3-bedroom units that are required. And of this list, about 40% of them could probably afford an affordable rate. So that would be of $550 or more. And the other 60% would require a deeper subsidy in order to maintain housing. So we turn over about 80 to 90 households a year, but we also add just as many people onto our wait list. So you can see why it's about a 5-year wait list in some areas. Next, my report goes into looking at what we have done over the last 3 years. Grey County has funded 54 units of affordable and market units. All of these units are occupied with people from our wait list, except for the community living build. So this is just recognizing some of the housing that has happened. And then my report goes into looking at some of the options for creating affordable housing. What might be some of the things that we could implement? Providing rent supplements. Rent supplements proves to be a good program because sometimes people that are on our wait list are actually in a unit that is appropriate for them. And they have supports and neighbors and neighborhoods, but they just can't afford to be there. So we would recommend up to $350 a month per household, and that we would ask that the participants, if they are aptly housed, then that they would come off our wait list. The only con is that there are a few vacant units out there. So if a person is not really in a unit that's not suitable for them right now, then that might be hard to find. Co-investment with nonprofit housing providers. The co-investment is, I think with non-profit housing providers, they're excellent partners at building and managing affordable housing. They're already doing it. And we also know that that housing is going to remain affordable for a long period of time. Sometimes if we're looking at entering into private market, which is still a great option, there is a 20-year affordability expectation on that property. Also the COCHI, so some of the provincial funds that are available from the province are geared towards nonprofits and not the private sector. So combining those funds along with some of our funds would make a build more affordable. We do have some current options too with some nonprofits that are interested in building, and I'll get into those a little bit later. Another option might be our Durham Seniors Housing opportunity. As you know, currently SHS Consulting is investigating opportunities that might be part of the campus of care model. So there could be some seniors affordable housing opportunity there. And we'll have more information on that available on that in the spring. Grey County housing opportunities. We have a few properties with some extra property or opportunity to expand. So there is an option at looking further down the road at some of our own properties and what could we do. The other part of the Grey County housing opportunities that we have is divesting properties. We have some older single detached homes that could be divested, and those proceeds could be put into an affordable housing fund to provide newer housing. And also we looked at land banks and properties requiring renovation. Again, this would be looking at working with our municipalities. We have had 2 municipalities reach out with some opportunities, looking at maybe purchasing those lands and putting it out there for private development. Of course, that's one of the pros. The cons to this might be that not all the land would make financial sense or community sense to develop. So it would be looking at those projects. We also know with a renovation too, sometimes it can be quite costly in order to renovate up to what would be required for today's build standards. So when we're looking at creating affordable housing, the project viability is very important. There's the option, obviously, of looking at commercial and tenant rents. So a combination of that, if that makes sense in that area. Looking at the appropriate amount of rents. So we would have a ratio of market units versus affordable versus attainable. And also with a mortgage in an affordable build, often the mortgage has to have a grant or some sort of funding source attached to it. So in other words, trying to make that mortgage payment affordable so that that monthly rent doesn't have to be as high. So that's where you get your affordable units. And of course, that would equal a viable project if you're able to balance those two. So some of our options for raising investment or capital to provide incentives would be looking at, I guess, looking at upfront funding. So for instance, if we're providing funding for construction or soft costs, then that's going to lessen the amount of mortgage that is needed, reduce those monthly payments, and therefore we can offer a higher number of affordable units. Ongoing subsidy is another idea. If funds are not available upfront, then there might be monthly subsidy provided to offset the operating or cover the operating costs that cannot be covered by the monthly rents. And this is the system that we currently use with our 9 nonprofits that we have. We provide a monthly subsidy to them so that the rents that they charge make sense and cover the costs. A rent subsidy can also be given to a person. So for instance, if we had a person who is on Ontario Works and their portion of their funding for shelter is $370, then if they're in a $550 affordable unit, then we could top them up with a rent subsidy so that would be an option for them. And another, of course, would be our land and incentives. So making sure that we are waiving fees such as development fees and working to lower, again, that monthly payment so that there can be affordable units within there. And also finding that right mix of rents. So playing around with the number of affordable, attainable and market rents can help in finding what that right combination of rental income is going to be in order to cover off the expenses. So one of the ways Grey County can help would be to have an affordable housing development fund. So this fund would be available to assist affordable housing builds, to possibly buy surplus lands and to offer rent supplements. And the ways in which we could find money in order to put into this fund would be our divestment of property. In 2017, council did approve, as I'd mentioned, the divestment of some detached wartime houses in Owen Sound. We currently have had only 2 houses, and this has just been recently. We have actually tenants that are interested in buying their house and have qualified for a mortgage, which is a really good news story that I'm happy to share. And then we have another vacancy right now too, which we would be looking at divesting. So if we're looking at selling those homes and then putting those funds into a pot, which then can be used to develop more energy efficient, accessible, and affordable homes. Any of the funds that any of the homes that we would be looking at removing. So for instance, these are two bedroom homes. We have the opportunity through Ottawa Heights of offering to rent geared to income. So we wouldn't be losing anything out of our portfolio. We would just be shifting those rent geared income to another area. I would also look at the possibility of looking at any other family home that came available. Just with the age of some of our family homes, it might make sense at this time to divest them and then put that money into building more energy efficient homes. Federal and provincial programs, we do receive funds. In 2020, we received $356,000 in order to build from the province. 2021, we received close to $500,000. Again, more money is needed than that a year in order to invest in a build, but we have been able to put together multi-years in order to provide enough funding for upfront costs for a build. There's also the National Housing Strategy does have soft costs that they will cover up to $150,000 to some of our nonprofit proponents that are looking at building affordable housing. They also have a co-investment program through the National Housing Strategy that could look at paying up to 5% of the build costs. And there's also a mortgage program that will provide low interest loans to nonprofits. Surplus funds, just looking at possibly if we did have some surplus operating or capital funds that maybe they could be included into our Affordable Housing Development Fund in order to get the fund started, recognizing that yes, we will need to capital funds over the years, but it's a possibility to add those funds over the next few years just to get the fund up and going. That would be an option. Looking at obviously our development charges for rental units, which has been passed. So that would be a way in reducing costs. An annual investment from the tax levy could be part of this fund, and they could be used for upfront funding to assist with construction costs or land costs. There is the option of mortgages and borrowing. Grey County and Owen Sound Housing Corporation is actually Grey County Corporation in which our homes are under. So there is the opportunity for us to borrow against our own buildings for mortgages if we were looking at a future Grey County build. And we also have end of operating mortgages for our nonprofits. So starting in 2023, we have some mortgages that we are currently paying right now for our nonprofits that will be expiring. We will be required to enter into a new agreement with our nonprofits, but there will be some savings within our nonprofit budget that could be redirected to this affordable housing fund. So currently, some of the initiatives that we have for 2021, we have a 60-unit apartment building called Ottawa Heights that is going to, well, it has started and should be completed by the end of 2021. And it is a mix of affordable, attainable, and market units. We have a portable housing benefit program. This benefit program is actually run through the province, and people that get the portable housing benefit, they apply directly to the province. We assist with the applications, and they do qualify for an amount that will help with their rent payments. We have about enough funding for 40 units. And we have our own rent supplement program that we're going to run through some OFI funds that we have. And this will assist up to 20 households with rent supplements. And these households, if again, their place is affordable or with the rent supplement and it's appropriate, would be coming off of our wait list. We were also approved through the Social Services Relief Fund to support 3 supportive housing projects. One of them through the Women's Center for 2 units, MEMWIM for 3 transitional units, and Lutheran Social Services is looking at converting a building into 4 supportive housing units. So really for 2021, there have been quite a few opportunities, and we're looking at possibly 130 units, most of which will be able to come off our wait list. So probably about 100 of them coming off our wait list. So 2021 has actually proved to be pretty good. We'll be able to make a dent in our wait list next year, which is great. So moving forward, there are some other future housing opportunities. I've had a chance over the last couple of months to talk with some of our nonprofits that are interested in building affordable housing. We have 2 that are interested right now and are practically shovel ready, which is great because that is the way our provincial funding looks at. It's one of the criteria. Lutheran Social Services in Owen Sound is interested in building 45-unit apartment. I did put together a cost estimate. In 2017, Lutheran Social Services had an architect have a look at a build of 45 units, and they costed out about $210 per square foot 3 years ago. We know that construction costs have gone through the roof, and that is no longer viable. We're probably looking at about around that $300 mark per square foot now. So there is a significant cost increase. The way we put it together here was looking at a unit cost so that we could look at what that monthly cost would be in combination. So we estimated about $270,000. You have to recognize that that does not include land costs because the land is already purchased and theirs. In order to do that, a brand new build of 45 units, a mortgage payment would be significantly higher than what the rents could afford, and it would be a deficit of about $12,000, well, $13,000 per month. So the way in which we would look at making this project viable would be to provide that upfront funding. Another option would be a monthly funding ongoing, but I had a look at it through upfront funding. So they would require about $3.7 million in order to lower the monthly mortgage payment in order to make it a break even or close enough to a break even. So that's just what we're facing right now. I think with the higher costs of construction and the lower rents that are required, this is just an example, one example of how upfront funding could work. Obviously, this is not set in stone. It has not been put through an architect as of right now, but we did look at what some of the average builds, local builds had been, and sat down with the nonprofit and worked out some numbers. So this is just an example. Again, I would caution us that it is an example, but it's a realistic example of what we could expect. So something like this just goes to show how that upfront funding will make builds work. Next, just sharing my screen here too with some timelines of possible builds and possible projects and funds that might be required. I've mentioned the 2021, 2022 for Lutheran Social Services, looking at 45 units. Owen Sound Housing Company right now has an existing 40 units that need to be redeveloped. They have consulted an architect in 2017 also and put together a plan for 90 units on that site. And again, we did look at the costs that they were estimated and at that time and did do an inflation rate for 2021 or sorry 22 I believe as to what that would look like, and again more funding is required up front. Provincial funds that might be available, assuming that we would receive $500,000 as we're receiving right now, was included in the cost estimate. The other is funds from the proponent themselves that they have committed to being able to put forward for the build or land cost in equivalence. And also Durham Senior Build too. Once we get back some information from SHS Consulting, we might have a better idea of what might be the possibilities for a seniors build in Durham. And funding resources, looking at what could be some of the funding resources we could have. I did talk with Kevin, and Kevin is on the call. There is some annualized funding that is currently available. This funding of $500,000 was being used in children's services, but I believe those funds have been uploaded, so that current funding is available to now become annualized funding for affordable housing. And Kevin could probably answer any questions on that. There's also housing surplus. We're estimating about $150,000 this year. Divesting our properties from 2021, we're hoping to get $500,000 minimum for the 2 properties. And starting in 2023, we would have about $150,000 to $200,000 annually from our nonprofit mortgages. I also, in my report, did put that there may be other funding sources that we could obviously add to this, looking at, again, if there was any reserve funds that might be available or any of the funds from the province. So that is what I have put together. I'm happy to answer any questions. But going back to the original ask of the report, looking at the committee support, some of the recommended action plans and timeline, that an affordable housing development fund be created. And then that fund is used to obviously fund affordable housing builds that we have before us. It's not to say that these won't be there might not be other opportunities that come forward that might make more financial sense in the next couple of years, but this is what we have on the table right now with 2 proponents that I believe are very, that are experienced in managing and building housing. This is also an example. The one on the left is an example of what the 45 building rendering could look like. And the one on the right is the drawing that was done in 2017 for 90 units.
Well, Anne-Marie, it looks like you've done all the heavy work. Good on you for your bringing it forward. I have 2 quick questions, and I'll go to the committee. You mentioned about in Canada, Ontario is the only one that's funded from the province down to the municipality. Why is that? And second, is there any federal funds that come through the province down to the municipality, or is it all provincial funds that come down to the municipality?
I'm not sure why that was decided by governments years ago. That's just the way that we ended up doing that, it's been that way for 30, 40 years. As to funding, we do receive some funds from the federal government too for some of our mortgages that are still happening in our buildings. We received no funds from the province at all for any of the housing that was downloaded to us back in 2000. We do receive funds from the province, though, to develop more affordable housing, look at rent supplements, home ownership programs. So instead of funding the housing themselves, they put those funds towards creating more affordable housing. But again, just with an increase in need, it just isn't enough. And that's the same, we're no different from anywhere else in Ontario.
Okay, well, thank you. And just one other question. There was a funding announcement that came out last week from our local MPP, Bill Walker, with a $601,500. And I thought some of it talks about housing. Do you have any comments to that funding announcement?
Sure. So the 601 was actually Gray and Bruce combined. Of that, 453,000, I believe, is for Bruce or for Gray County. And it is looking at our social services relief fund. So we received some funding previously for helping community organizations that are supporting vulnerable populations during COVID. That was our first amount of funds. The second phase funding was looking at providing housing, longer term housing post-COVID. So that's the 3 builds that I talked about in the report for supportive housing. Now there's a little bit more funding being added to that to look at if there are any other possibilities for providing that longer term housing. We do have one of our proponents, Women's Center, that's looking at expanding in what they're doing, and we'll probably reach out to other community partners too. So it is new funding, which is great.
Okay, well, thank you for that. Okay, questions, committee? Councillor Keaveney, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair McQueen. And thanks so much, Anne Marie, for really well-prepared, interesting, and informative presentation. Just in relation to your not-for-profit partners, and I know you do have several, but I have to think in Meaford, we have a Rotary Club managing the Godfrey Apartments. And how do we go about making other potential partners aware of what you're doing and what the need is and the opportunities for funding and so on? Is there any sort of a promotional marketing piece to what you're doing and reaching out to some of those organizations who may not be involved, but who potentially might be able to participate?
In the past, we've issued, whenever we do get funds from the province, we have issued requests for proposals, and we do try and send it out to all of our avenues, especially even through the Poverty Task Force, which a lot of agencies or proponents are. But we tend to look at, I mean, we help people all along the process. I picked these 2 because they are shovel ready or closer enough to being shovel ready. It does take quite a while to get there. Number one, you have to have the land. It has to be zoned properly. There has to be a board. There has to be some sort of previous housing. And of course, Rotary Club would have all of those. And there has to be the desire by that agency or that nonprofit to want to expand what they're doing. But I always encourage anybody to contact the county. I'm also hesitant to put something out there when we don't have the funds to back it. It's a lot of money and time and effort for people to gather and put together a proposal if there's no funding to back it. So I'm very respectful of people's time that way. And but I do ask that people do keep in contact with me if they are looking at something in the near future, or they are just interested. We can have those conversations on where they would have to be in order to get funding.
Okay, Councillor Burley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Anne Marie, great report. Thinking out of the box. I mean, thinking way out of the box. Most of the housing starts and so on are all in urban centers. It makes perfect sense. You have the proper services, sewer, water, and so on. I'm just wondering, since the county has started a new transportation order throughout the county, covers a lot of areas, is there any appetite to try and look at some of our rural areas to see if there's any housing parts where they might be able to be picked up in combination with the new transportation corridors?
So I think when we're looking at scale, there's certain builds that make sense scale wise, like even 45 is actually almost kind of small to make it work with the rents. So that's obviously a concern. But that's where I think our rent supplements come in handy. That's where if there is a person, let's say, I don't know, in Newstead that's housed appropriately, but just needs a rent supplement in order to stay there. I think that's where we can direct those funds. Rent supplement programs, there's no, they don't have to go in a certain order with our coordinated access. So we'll be able to target some of our rural areas with that funding.
Okay, Councillor Swever.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Anne Marie, for the report. I just have a question on the financial resources. On your slide, it said there was 500,000 available. In the report, it says 300,000
That's right.
per year.
Yes, at the time of report, we didn't have the exact amount. So the exact amount I did include in the slides is correct. It is 500,000 from the province.
Okay,
Have
thank you.
confirmation.
And then with that, going forward in the funds needed, under the projects, there's, I'm just trying to find that on the page before that. There was a need of 2 million in 2022 and 5 million in 2023 under county funds on that table. So that would leave us quite a bit short. So do you have any ideas of where that money might be coming from?
It does leave us short.
Yeah.
But it's a start. And I think that that's why I was kind of putting that out there now. If there were ideas as to whether or not we wanted to increase funding, there's also a lot of unknowns in that too. We could receive more from the provincial funds. A couple of ideas would be to annualize funding. Another one would be to bring back, here's what we need in order to make this work when we have, more information from how much we get from the province and whatnot, and put that to council and say, we are $500,000 short, or we are $2.5 million short. Where could we get those funds from? So when we had a better idea of what those exact numbers are, but at the same time, building up that affordable housing, because again, I'm not sure how many other properties I might be able to divest. There's a lot of unknowns in that table.
Yeah, for sure, and that's understandable, but I think it's kind of sooner than later, we've got to go to county council and say, what is your appetite? Because
Yes.
there's no sense, working with Lutheran Social Services and 07 Housing Company, and then when in 2022 and 2023, we go to the county and ask for the budget, and what if council says no? I mean, then it's a lot of time and energy wasted. So it would be kind of like, a 5-year capital plan would be good for this attainable housing, or, to say, okay, this is part of the capital budget. And so those amounts, everybody knows what they are and where we're going, because it takes a while sometimes to generate support for these initiatives, and certainly I'm very supportive. But, I also would get frustrated if, at the time when, there's a lot of good work done, and then all of a sudden you go to county council and you say, oh, well, that means a 3% tax increase, so we're not going to do it. It's, I'd rather, get some certainty.
Thank you, Councillor Soever, and so would I. So I guess that's maybe why I'm here asking, what is the appetite?
Okay, well, there you go. Councillor O'Leary.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Kevin, what is 1% on our tax levy? What is that number?
It'd be about 610,000.
So why is the tax levy not mentioned in the Affordable Housing Development Fund? Like, why are we just afraid to talk about the tax? Like, why don't we just raise the tax levy by 1 full percentage and say we're taking 1% and we're specifically sending that to affordable housing? We've got a major problem. Everybody's interested in affordable housing. Like, I just think we're pussyfooting around. Like, if we need more money, then just make the recommendation to council. We're going to jump 1% of our tax levy, and we're going to go right at this. I don't know who's going to argue, because we're all in the same boat. It's a major problem and it needs to be looked after. So I just think we need to have the courage to step up.
Well, Mr. Councillor O'Leary, are you moving an amendment to this motion?
I'd love to. I have no problem with that. Oh, I think Kevin just passed out, I think.
Maybe I'll go to Kevin and then back to Anne Marie then. Go ahead, Kevin.
And Anne Marie hinted at it in the report, I guess, and mentioned my name, but since November, when I brought the budget report to council and background and said where I thought we were at, since then, the province has announced that they are not going to cost share in some childcare programs that they had originally announced for 2021. Those amounted to roughly, let's say, $350,000 plus. And since that time, negotiations of our employee benefit plan occurred, and we received some savings there as well. So in advance of this, as a senior management, we discussed this, and we've built into the housing budget for 2021, $500,000 to go to this development fund. And that is then a conversation for council as part of the budget document, but that is built into the budget now. The budget increase is still very similar to what it was, so there's not an impact of what I had presented back in November, but we've, as staff, we've put this in there for council's consideration. So right now in the 2021 draft budget is $500,000 to go to capital reserves for this affordable housing.
Okay, and that's really good. If I could, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
That's really good. And the things that Anne Marie listed in the development fund are all well and good. I think we should just keep going with that. And I think we should raise the tax levy 1% specifically for affordable housing. All of these other things can keep up. We're not going to catch up to this thing unless we dive into this seriously.
Okay, Anne Marie, I think you were going to maybe follow up with Councillor Larry's comments there. Go ahead.
So it's similar to what Kevin said on page 12. At the time, we thought it was $300,000. Annualized funds I did put in for $300,000, but there's no reason why that annualized funds, because that's what that is, that levy increase or that levy dollar. That could be where that is put into this report if you're looking at adding in that 1%. So it is in there. It just doesn't say levy. It just says annual funds. But that is, we could even put a different fund in there because the annualized funds, Kevin, would be that 500 because they're not going to have an impact on the levy because they've already been raised in taxation technically. Am I getting that right?
Go ahead, Kevin.
No, not what I'm saying is this would be in a new initiative. You'd see your housing capital budget go up $500,000. What I'm saying is that since I presented a budget background and what the budget was looking at, we've realized other budget reductions. So that what I'm saying is by adding that in, that 500,000, I'm still coming in very close to what I had presented council back in November, just over 2% levy increase for 2021. So it is a tax increase, and it is there along with other things that we're doing, such as the 1% for annual capital for roads and bridges, for our asset management, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, that's how it's, what I'm saying is instead of that increase being 3%, we've found other changes that have occurred since I presented that report. But yeah, that 500,000, if council approved that would be in that budget then in your tax levy every year. So each year there'd be a $500,000 contribution going into that capital fund then.
But we're still short.
No.
Yeah. But it's a good start, right? Okay. Councillor Larry, do you have a follow-up on that or?
Well, that's exactly what I don't want to hear. That's a good start. I just think, I just don't want to take this a little piece at a time. I just think council needs to make a really large step forward here and do something big.
So following up on that.
Hey, like if no one else is speaking up and doesn't agree, that's fine. I'm just throwing it out there. I just think it's, these are our most vulnerable people. It's a problem for everyone. I don't know of a councillor that didn't campaign on affordable housing, and all we've done is talk about it. So I just think it's an opportunity for everyone to make a commitment based on what we campaigned on, and let's get this done.
So just following up on that, Councillor O'Leary, I guess going back to Kevin, a question I had was, are there any surplus land that can't be developed that we could surplus off that would also help this fund? Is there anything out there? I know, do we do a annual review of what we own, and is there anything on that side of something that I always look at, if you have surplus land that should go into a fund that's for a rainy day fund? I just wonder, is there anything, Kevin or Madam CEO, that, or have we done that review of surplus lands or anything in there that is available that is not for development that could be surplus that could also go into that fund? So who, Madam CEO first? Or
Anne Marie and Randy both, I think, have some intelligence on this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So part of the surplus land research that we're looking at is more, we were looking at what land that the county owns, the municipality owns, that could be utilized for affordable and attainable builds that could be offered through CIP incentives. So the focus has been more on what we could look at potentially building or using as future building projects, whether it's ourselves building it or nonprofits building it or private developers building it in terms of the attainable side. So that's something that we're still investigating further in terms of identifying those pieces of land. But, you know, outside of that, I guess there could be some other lands that are not suitable for build that would be potentially surplus to our needs that could be divested. We haven't focused on that at this stage, though. The focus has been more in terms of what lands would be suitable for affordable and attainable builds.
Okay, well, maybe that's something we can sort of look down the road, maybe, to see if there's. Anne Marie, do you have any follow up on that? Or?
Yeah, and again, I think that's leaning more towards the attainable units. What my presentation is today is more looking at those affordable units. Right. You know, surplus lands would be great for developing rental units in period, but we're looking at nonprofits that are going to provide a subsidy to people that need it and supports to people that need it too.
Councillor Burley, and then Councillor Keegan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, I never thought I'd say this, but I support Councillor Leary's motion 100%, and I would have no problem at all second the motion to take it to County Council floor for a great discussion at adding 1%. I think it's a conversation we need to have, and that would be the place to have it.
So currently, right now, through the Madam Clerk, we have a motion on the floor that's with regards to Anne Marie's report. I guess, Madam Clerk, I guess if there was a separate motion that would be separate to this, or would you want an amendment to this motion?
Well, this Anne Marie's motion speaks to establishing a fund, and I think Kevin has spoken to that in that he's included in the 2021 budget for council's consideration. So that's when, if this task force supports the resolution that Anne Marie has done, then that will remain in the 2021 budget for council's consideration.
I see.
Kim, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but that's the time, and Kevin, that's the time when council can review that budget and make some changes to that affordable housing fund, and as they can with any other piece of the budget.
Yes, the only other thing I wondered about, Heather, was whether this committee, or this task force, I should say, wanted to make a resolution or a recommendation to council that they do explicitly consider that additional 1% overall over and above what's already in the 21 budget.
I would much rather
certainly be it would certainly be okay to add that as an amendment. I think it's it is in the same vein as what Anne Marie has noted in her original resolution. So I don't think it would be out of order to do that. And I see that Tara has noted that she has actually drafted something that she might throw up on the screen for the task force's consideration then.
Okay, so okay, go ahead then. So I guess just for clarity, then I'm hearing that there's a mover and a seconder that's interested in this. Is that what I'm hearing? So there it is.
Yes.
So this amendment is moved by Councillor O'Leary, second by Councillor Burley. So this is recommends. Okay. Okay, comments on the amendment? Warden Hicks. You're on mute there, Mr. Warden.
My apologies. I think that Kim just offered the clarity that I was seeking about Councilor O'Leary's proposal. If I'm understanding things correctly, embedded in 2021 budget is the 500,000 already. And Councilor O'Leary is proposing that we add on top of that the 1%, which would be about 610,000, correct?
Clarity, Kevin? Is that clear? Kevin?
Well, I was going to ask this question because I was trying to get clarity. Are you asking for 1%, like 610,000 in the budget? Or are you asking now for another 610 added onto the 500? So I'm just looking for some clarity myself. Sorry.
I'm looking to add the 610,000.
This is over above what is in there.
Yeah.
So,
Correct.
Mr. Warden,
because Mr. Chairman, you know, I've said to everyone, I'm looking for us to make a bold move. And this would certainly be bold. And in addition to the 610, my reading of the motion was that it would be 1% in 2021, but I thought it would say 1% per year commencing in 2021.
you want to go back to that?
That's what I would hope that the language would be. I didn't read that in the draft that I saw from Tara.
Right, and that's not the wording that is on there, but I can certainly, if that's the wish, I can make that change.
I thought that that was the wish of Councillor O'Leary, and that's what I was hoping to see, is that it would be that the tax levy be increased by 1% commencing, 1% per year commencing in 2021.
I'm going to go to Councillor O'Leary. Councillor O'Leary?
Yes, if I could just clarify, that was my intent, that if we raise the taxes by a full percent, that 1% would go towards affordable housing each year.
So just to finish off, Mr. Chairman, what we would be doing is doing something fairly bold and proposing a bold move for council to consider. And so we would have this sort of injection from the start to get something done, but we're also committing to making a longer term commitment with that 1% per year.
Okay, so I apologize. I think I missed Councillor Keaveney. She did have her hand up after Councillor Burley. So Councillor Keaveney, I apologize for that.
Sorry about that.
Oh, no concerns at all, Chair McQueen, and certainly echo the comments. And I was going to offer the same as Councillor Burley did in terms of seconding the motion. I really like it. We have done this in Meaford with 1% for roads, 1% for bridges, and 0.5% for facilities. And we've done that for a few years now, about 5, and it's really successful and really has made a difference. So I fully support the motion on the table to do this this year and ongoing for the rest of this term and hopefully into the next term as well, should that council agree. So no, thank you, Councillor O'Leary, for bringing that forward.
Okay, so the amendments on the floor, are there any other discussion points? Go ahead, Councillor O'Leary.
Can I just ask, Anne-Marie, like, where does land costs come in your, like, when you're talking about the amount of money to build per unit, that does not include land costs, or it does?
It does not.
So,
And just simply with these two, they both own the land already.
right. So I'm just wondering if there should be something there. Like, if the county is offering the money to do the builds, should we pressure the municipalities to offer the land free?
Well, in these two specific ones, both the proponents already own the land, but I guess if we were looking to future, one of the things that we could use this fund for is looking at that surplus lands. And most municipalities are pretty good at offering, like, I would imagine we could work with them at offering reduced costs or free lands. You know, once I think this gets momentum, I think everybody's going to want to help too. And I know certainly Owen Sound has always been great about waiving development charges too, when it comes to the builds.
I know that development charges are, but I'm just wondering if we should be having that discussion with it, because I don't know if that should be in the in this motion, or whether we should just worry about that later. Like, I just think it will also help in the cost if we pressure our own municipalities into providing the dirt. If the county's going to step up with this money, then it's just a way of pressuring the municipalities to get in the game too. I guess it's all coming from one. There's only one taxpayer, but.
And I also look at the money that we do have set aside right now, and the money that we need to get these two builds done in the next, 3 or 4 years. It's going to take all of the money that we're actually talking about right now too. So I just worry about asking for land and then not having money to develop on it.
Right. So okay, well, so we're good with what we have then. I just thought I'd throw that out.
Okay, Mr. Warden, go ahead. You're on mute again.
Sorry, I believe that Kim had her hand up first, so.
Kim, Madam CEO, did you?
Sorry, really quickly. One was in the new development charges regime that we're going into, Randy, putting money aside towards affordable housing. Remind me, how much rope do we have there?
Yeah, so part of the new eligible services that were changed under the Development Charges Act recently by the province includes affordable housing. So that's something that I think council will be probably interested in exploring in terms of can we look at collecting development charges to add also to this affordable housing fund that Anne-Marie's calling from even a development charge perspective. So as growth is helping to pay for the provision of affordable housing on a go-forward basis as a percent of the overall, of course, growth costs, because majority of our growth costs right now are county roads. About 91% of our development charges is county roads related. However, a new eligible service is affordable housing, as Kim mentioned. And so that's something that we can explore because the development charges background study needs to be updated in 2021. So the timing is absolutely perfect for council to explore that as an option as part of that development charges review.
The other thing is about the current CIP and the opportunities that provides to the member municipalities to undertake donations of land towards these projects. And I think it's important for us as staff to continue to bring back information to council and help them to understand, I don't know, where other places or even within one of our municipalities are doing something interesting or innovative, because this isn't something that is coming across your desk very frequently. And so if we can help people to understand where there's opportunities, that might be helpful.
Okay. Go ahead, Councilor Weber.
Yes, I'm just wondering, a follow-up question to Randy. With these development charges, how can we structure them? Like, can we say it's one rate if your house is under 1,000 square feet, if another rate if it's 2,000, and when you get up to like 9,000 square feet, it's through the roof? Because clearly, on a 9,000 square foot house, and there are those around, and there's quite a bit of leeway to collect an extra $1 million or so in development charges, because if they can afford 9,000 square feet, they can certainly afford. So is there that kind of flexibility?
Ready?
Through you, Chair McQueen. Yeah, this is something that was explored as part of the last update, because prior to the last update, we actually did have a breakdown by square footage in terms of the size of the units. In discussions with the development charge consultant at that time, I think there was previous decisions at the intermunicipal board and other matters where the recommendation was to not go with square footage in terms of breaking down of development charges and to focus on residential type. At least that was my recollection. I don't know, Kevin, do you recall something along those lines as well?
No, that's correct, Randy. And I believe there was decisions, like you said, that Hempson recommended for us not to. So we've gone back to the unit types of, you know, a single and a semi or an apartment is that. It could, I guess as part of the update again, it could always be revisited with the consultant again to question that. But I know they got into more about it's about the services each house would take and what they believe that is. And that's what the capital funding of development charge is for, not the, I guess, the ability to pay type thing based on size. So, but it's something that could be questioned again with the consultant, and as part of, we're doing an update in 2021 anyway. So we can be investigated again.
Yeah.
Councilor Glover, did you have a follow-up there?
Yeah, I have follow-up. Just to say that, well, if it's based on the services required, I think it would be only fair that once you exceeded a certain square footage, that you're likely to have a housekeeper and a gardener and a pool boy and all of this. So in that case, you would need to have affordable housing. So therefore, I think it's a logical step that maybe we look at it. There's nothing, I guess, we can do in terms of the tax rate to create a new class of property called luxury residential.
Kevin, there's a new one for you.
Yeah, that's not that I'm aware of anything for residential is to be classed as a one. So no, there's
maybe luxury residential at 2.
I guess it's something you could lobby the province to do, I guess. But
well, we do know though that those properties are maybe more luxury that are on waterfront do pay more taxes because they're higher value, right? So I guess that's a little bit how that trickles down. Or new property.
That's my street, yeah.
There you go. Okay, so we still have a motion to amend the original motion on the floor. Is there any further discussion on that amendment? Kevin?
Could the motion be put back up on the screen? I just want to make.
So this is an amendment to the original motion. So Tara, are you able to put that up? Thank you. So moved by Councillor Leary, second by Councillor Burley. There we are.
So, sorry, Mr. Chair. I just want to make sure and the intent and that we're trying to follow what the committee's saying here. So currently right now you have 500,000 built in already in the draft budget. You're asking now for another 610,000 approximately to be added in. So you'd have built in then to your tax rate, if approved by council, approximately $1.1 million. That would be there going forward. Are you asking then, so that would be like 2022 if council didn't change direction or whatever are you asking for another 1% to be added on top of that then in 2022? Is that my understanding? So it would go from 1.1 in 2021 to 1.7 in 2022. Is that what you're building for? Or are you speaking to a minimum, or are we defaulting back to in 2022, 1% being roughly 600 would be then the annual commitment? So I'm just trying to get clarity here of what is trying
to. Could I speak to that, Mr. Chair?
Go ahead.
So I agree with Kevin there. I don't think that's worded quite right, because we're not increasing it 1% per year. We're increasing it 1% this year, and for each year thereafter, 1 full percentage of our tax levy will go towards affordable housing. So it will be 610,000 or whatever that number is per year, but it doesn't raise 1% each year. Did I explain that right? So it's increased by 1% for 2021.
Maybe we just say that we implement a 1% dedicated levy for affordable housing. Some words to that effect. Does that make more sense, Kevin?
Yeah, similar, like we have that each year.
Yeah, 0.25.
Yeah.
Yeah, right, Kevin? And then we had that 0.25 dedicated health fund, right?
Yeah, so that's right. The health initiatives funding that we make sure that, so if whatever next year it's 650,000 is 1%, that's what you would like to see then in the annual budget to go towards this fund. Is that,
Council.
am I interpreting that correct?
Right, so right at the end of that then, Tara, that should say dedicated levy specifically to affordable housing.
Each year. Yeah, each year.
And I don't even think that you need the front end of this. Like the task force recommends to county council that commencing in 2021, a 1% dedicated levy specifically to affordable housing be implemented or something like that.
Yeah,
Just hang on. Okay, just we'll let Tara do her magic here for a
Yeah.
second.
Yeah, perhaps annually.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the word, annually.
Should it say recommend it annually?
Well, that would be kind of loosey-goosey, specifically 1%.
Okay, so each year. Okay, let's keep it simple, right? Kevin, how's that look?
That looks fine, but I'm still, sorry, I'm maybe confusing this, but I have 500,000, or the staff have put 500,000 into the 2021 budget.
This is over and above.
Right, so going forward then you would have 1.1 million each year coming, which is more than 1%. So that if you're saying 1%, I'd be dropping it in 2022. Did you follow what I'm saying now?
Right, but so whatever that number is though, so if you're adding that 500,000 to it, then it would be 1.1 million a year.
We've got, we've got a base established now, right? You've got that money that's in the budget as the budget stands at this point. What we don't have is a separate line, and I think this is what you're looking for, is a separate line that speaks to this 1% levy for affordable housing, correct? In the future,
Yeah.
with this resolution, you would retain that 1% dedicated levy, and I assume that you would retain the funds that are in the base budget as it stands, unless operational requirements meant that we needed to make adjustments in either the housing department or another one. But you're going to keep a standalone line.
Right.
So just going back to what Kevin is saying, so 1% this year is 610,000. And if 1% is next year, that 1% could be 650,000, right, Kevin? That's what you're thinking, right?
That's at least that's what I was interpreting what you're trying to accomplish here.
Yeah.
But what's not problematic isn't the right word here, sorry, but I've already got more than one, I've got almost 1.8% if you add 1% to what I've got there now, is what I'm saying. So then next year, if you say it's just to be 1%, I've got there's almost like what we're doing in 2021 is a one-time of 500,000 plus 1% to the levy go forward. So
Yes.
that you'd get 1.1 in 2021, and then after that you would get 610. If that
Right, that's got it. But it doesn't say, the way this motion is right now, it doesn't say that we're increasing the levy by 1%. And it needs to say that. It says we're taking 1% of the levy and putting it to affordable housing, but the levy has to be increased by 1% in 2021. Right, there we go.
And year after, and each year after or something.
No, it's just we're raising the levy 1 full % in 2021, and then from here on, we're taking 1% of the levy and implementing that towards affordable housing. So Kevin's got it right. It's going to be 1 point something million this year, and then for every year after, it's going to be that $600 and some thousand. It's going to be 1% of our budget.
Councilor O'Leary, that's your bold move, right?
That's pretty, I think it's really bold. It's not mine. We're making this together. I just think we need to do this.
Okay, so I got Warden and then Councillor Schweber.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And that's not to suggest that the Affordable Housing Development Fund would be limited to that 1% levy. What I'm understanding is that there could be other avenues of funding for the Affordable Housing Development Fund. But so let's say, for example, we divest of a property and we put that into the Affordable Housing Development Fund. So there might be other, so in year one, we are putting 500, but in year two, there could be 300 or 200 that's in there already as a result of other initiatives. Or maybe we have been able to leverage a provincial or federal funds. Those things would all end up into this, I'm gathering would end up into this Affordable Housing Development Fund. So next year there could be 500,000 again, plus the 1%, which we're saying will be annualized. Correct, Anne Marie?
That's how I'm understanding. And you're right, like if we divest funds, so we're not going to say that 1%
Right.
is minus the 500. So there's always that 1% going in there no matter what. You're right. So it wouldn't just be 610,000. It would be the 610,000 plus the divested properties, plus the provincial programs, plus, yeah. And that's the only way we can keep up to develop.
So following up with that, if we divested a piece of property for $1 million, would there need to be a motion from council to put it into that specific fund? Okay.
There would be, and every time I divest a property, it has to come to council. It's because it'll be over $250,000. So it would have to come to council anyways.
Okay, I got Councillor Schweber next. Go ahead.
Yes, and just following up on that, there's nothing to keep us from putting any surpluses in here as well. You know, there's lots of ways to fill up the fund, but I think it's a good idea to have a separate levy, because then at budget time, it's not a subject for, well, it is a subject for debate if somebody wants to change that, but it would be directed solely at this item, and I don't think there would ever be enough support to do that. So I think it's a good way to make sure there's money going in. And if it is pegged at 1%, with the pending reassessment coming and I knowing how much the property values in Thornbury and Meaford have gone up, the 1% is not going to be in the 600,000s on the next go round. It'll be closer to $1 million. So we'll see what the new assessments come out at, but based on sales prices for real estate, the 1% should be close to $1 million.
Okay, just getting back on track. So we have the amendment motion on the floor. Is everybody clear with that motion? Okay, hearing no other discussion, all in favor? Okay, that is carried. So now we go to the main motion, which is including Anne Marie's report. Any discussion on the full motion? Okay, I have a quick question to you, Anne Marie. Just on the side of secondary units, and if more secondary units get built, is there an opportunity to get subsidy housing if they became low income housing?
So if there was a secondary unit, we could offer a rent supplement to that person that's living there. So there's definitely ways to subsidize a person's rent that's there.
Okay, because that's something else I think is a tool that people aren't taking advantage of. And there's so many opportunities, especially now with the removal of the development charge on that secondary detached unit. So there's another avenue that we need to sort of look at trying to promote in itself. Okay, so any other discussion to the main motion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Sorry, Kevin, did you have something to say there?
Can I see it? And I'm still, I really want to capture what the committee wants to do here. And I want to make sure we get this right. So, because what I'm trying, you want 1% next year. So as Councillor Schweber said, if it's $1 million next year, 1% equals $1 million, it'd be $1 million going in there. But right now, if I add 610, as your 1% to already what I got in there, I'm at 1.1. So that's it. You'd be actually down is what I'm getting at. So you want this to be really somehow 1.1 million in 2021. And then after that, it's only going to be 1%, whatever that number is. So Um,
So Kevin, the 500 that's in there now that came from Children's Services, and I forget the other location of that, we only have access to those funds this year. Is that for 2021?
No, what I'm getting at is if we would have just taken, for example, childcare, they were saying you're going to have to cost share in the
Yes.
funding that. So we had built in 20% into our budget, our draft budget. And then they came back and said, here, just about.
Never mind. Yeah.
Never mind. We're not going to do that in 2021 because of all the pressures and stuff. And so I said, okay. And there was that. And then the benefit, I said, okay, based on what I had given council before, we could put 500,000 into the tax rate and still have a tax increase that was very similar to what I'd already had to council and proposed to them. So it wouldn't be all of a sudden someone saying, well, you told me roughly 2.18%. And now why is it 3.4, right? And without going into all that. So I said, okay, here's an opportunity to use that available now and still stay within the parameters I had set, right?
But what we understand is that in the future, the province is going to, at some point, want to cost share that administrative part of Children's Services. So
That's
we
right.
are going to have to cough up those funds for that purpose unless something else changes. And the benefits thing was likely more of a one-time thing because we just finished going back to market, and this was a weird year because of COVID, and we didn't get a lot of uptake on some things, and they gave us a bit of a break. But
Yeah.
again, you all know from your own municipalities what benefit costs are doing. So just to be clear with the committee, that's where that 500 came from. We have it this time, but likely we won't have all of that the next year. And so what do you want to look at 2021 as just a bonus to get us kicked off and started here with this? And then we'll deal with 2022 when 2022 comes around, that we've got the 1%. And if there's more than that, we'll have to look for it.
Or funds, as we talked about 10 minutes ago, if other funds appear, we can always put that into the same dedicated fund as well, right?
So I'm saying that that dedicated fund, sorry, Mr. Chair, the dedicated fund would show a transfer to reserve of 1.1 million in 2021. It would then actually go down to 600 2022 then, just so you know, because it's then going to offset whatever downloads the province or other cost increases we're going to have, but you would still have in the 2022 budget then 600 or whatever 1% is in the 2022. Do I have that interpreted correct? Is that the intent, what everybody's looking for? Okay.
I think that would be, the key would be a minimum of that 1%. There could be others. And I think that's maybe how you word it. It's a minimum of that dedicated 1%.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure you see, like, even if we separate this out in the budget, you'd see like 1.1, but then in 2022, you're only going to see 600,000. So it's going to look like a budget reduction. You know what? That's what I'm getting at. Okay.
Minimum.
Yeah, no, exactly. Whatever 1% is, but that's what it would have, if you're looking at it, is if you were reducing that budget in 2022, then is what I'm getting at.
Well, we'll have to dig other funds up for them to make it higher than 6.10.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm not getting my thought.
Don't worry.
across.
Don't worry. We'll back you there. I got Anne Marie and then I got the warden.
So would it make more sense, Kevin, if we separated that out in the motion and said that there is a one-time fund of $500,000 in for this year, and then next year it would be 1% moving forward? Would that make your life easier at all, or am I confusing the things even more?
Well, that could be in a footnote. Could that be in a footnote, Kevin?
I just thought this committee's intent was trying to get 1.1 million this year in that budget somehow.
So Anne Marie says.
That's what my thought their intent was too. So, yeah.
And I agree. And sorry, Mr. Chair, I agree. I think Kevin is right. And I think he's saying what the committee is looking for is that we have the 500 in this year's budget coming up. And the amending motion was to add 1% to that, starting in 2021, having a 1% levy. And the funding we'll have to look at that on an annual basis.
Is that okay, Kevin? Are you clear on that?
Yeah, I just want you to understand when council see this budget in 2022, that when you see a figure of 1.1 going down now to 6 or 700, whatever 1% is, that you understand what that's doing. It's maintaining 1%, but you're getting a big push in the first year, but after that, it's going to drop down what's built into that tax rate then. And just as long as committee is clear, that's what your intent is. That's the way I understand your intent. So I just want to make sure that's how the budget going forward would be built.
I think Councillor O'Leary said we're going to make a statement, right, Councillor O'Leary?
We just did.
Mr. Warden.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On that note, hopefully it wouldn't go down because we have other avenues for adding monies to this housing development fund. What I think we need is a mechanism or perhaps a body. I hate to create another committee, but there needs to be some sort of a oversight of, how are we directing funds into the monies into this fund annually, and who's overseeing that? Is that Anne Marie, or is that a group that meets twice a year or 3 times a year? I don't know, but I think we need to think about that each year. How are we going to oversee the development of this development fund?
Sort of like an Alice committee.
No, that we, well, I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. I don't have the answer, but I think that somebody needs to have oversight of that.
Anne Marie's got an answer.
So I don't know if I have an answer, but I have a suggestion. I'm hoping that by this report, you're giving me permission to divest the property and put it into the affordable housing program. And anytime that happens, I have to come to council. So it's probably going to be council that would be overseeing what goes into this, into this fund. So the 1% levy, the provincial dollars is obviously going to happen through a report. Divestment of property is going to happen through a report. And, if there's surplus funds at the end of the year and we possibly want to redirect it, that's going to happen through a report too. So I'm thinking it'll be all of council that would be letting us know if that's okay.
Okay, everybody. Is there also another opportunity, Anne Marie, of people bequesting money to this fund?
I don't know that. We've never actually had that happen, but
Maybe,
that would look like.
Yeah. So moving forward with our budget, so you got the 2.18 and then 1% is dedicated to that. Is there a way to promote that, market that, so it's sort of broken down that this is a good news story? I think that would be good to really not spin it, but sort of roll it out that way. And Kevin, do you have any thoughts on that? Or
I think it should be a key speaking point in Anne Marie's housing section of the budget for sure. Yeah. And if we want, we could separate it out. It would even in the budget document itself, instead of mixing it in with our normal housing, you could see a separate budget line for this. We could do something like that too, possibly, if that's, you want to raise attention to it. But I think even as politically, if you guys would like to jump on it at budget time, that'd be great too, to help with the media picking it up.
Anne Marie has an annual housing and homelessness report as well. That is another place to be able to speak to the targets that you've set and the achievements that you've been able to make.
Okay, Kevin?
I just think too, this is it's a discretionary reserve that's up to council to decide what they want to do with it, go forward. But that could be something like, just as our CAO said, that Anne Marie would report each year on what's in that fund and how it's being used and stuff. So that definitely could come back through council then to say where it's at, how much has been used, where it's been used, et cetera.
Okay.
I think we should just raise it 1%, blame it on Kevin. He's got big shoulders and we're good to
I think that's his concern. Okay, Kevin, we got your back.
No, it's all what council's wishes are. We try as staff, we're trying to follow your directions here as best we can, but and keep a happy, keep our assets looked after and keep things going and keep our services going. But, and this term of council always that we've heard is this has been one of your strategic initiatives that you wanted to accomplish. So that's why as staff, when we saw these savings, we realized that we could take that budget back and look similar to what I had it in November. That's why we said, well, let's put 500,000 in. So that's, we were trying to follow what we thought what council was looking for, so.
Well, I'm thinking of Rob Hatton in communication quoting Councillor O'Leary, we're making a bold move. I think that was the quote that Councillor O'Leary said. All right, so we have this motion on the floor. I don't see no other discussion on that. Oh, sorry, Councillor Burley, you did indicate you wanted to speak. Is that right?
All I wanted to say was that we're, as a committee, are making a very bold move, which is great. But we seem to be making our life very difficult for no reason at all. It's a move we're making towards county council. County council will either approve it or not. And you'll see that we are making a bold move, exactly what we said we would do. I don't think we need to make it very complicated. Just move forward.
Okay, there you go. Words of Mr. Burley. Okay, all in favor of the motion? Opposed? All right, that motion's carried. Okay, going to our agenda then, there's a verbal update. Is that by Anne Marie or who's doing that? Other business?
Scott's going to provide the update, Chair McQueen.
Okay, go ahead.
Great, thanks, Chair McQueen and members of the committee. I apologize, some of you would have heard this update this morning on our Planning and Economic Development and Tourism Committee, so I'll try to keep this somewhat brief. This is just a follow-up to the report we had at Committee of the Whole and various task force and committees with respect to the University of Toronto collaboration project, where we had a team of 5 master's planning students investigating our community improvement plans and our official plan and zoning policies for our downtown main streets, to see if there was any opportunity to look at downtown revitalization in that regard, and also to look at affordable or attainable housing projects in those main streets, and particularly in some of those main streets where we might have existing vacancies or even some missing buildings. Could we look at some additional residential spaces there? I'm pleased to say the team was fantastic to work with. They put in a lot of effort here, reviewing not only the county official plan, but the 8 member municipal official plans and the 9 zoning bylaws across the county. They also looked at other jurisdictions such as Hamilton, Kingston, Peterborough, Whistler, and Orangeville. And they conducted over 30 interviews with stakeholders from across the county. They did conduct interviews with people from every municipality, including municipal staff, but also including downtown business owners and downtown landlords, to see what some of the opportunities and also what some of the current barriers are towards filling some of those vacancies and towards promoting more residential development in this regard. There's no surprises in the report, I would say. Generally, they recommended we need to try to make sure our downtowns are healthy with respect to a core commercial base, but also ideally with a decent amount of residential spaces as well. They made some recommendations specific to housing, including that all of our community improvement plans include funding for affordable housing. And I will say in this regard, that currently within Gray, all of our municipalities either have a community improvement plan in place, or they have a planned community improvement plan project to take place in 2021. So those that don't quite have their documents in place yet have earmarked 2021 as the year to get that done. The project also recommended that the county and municipalities should look at our commercial supply in our downtowns. It could be that in some cases there's an oversupply of commercial, and therefore maybe there's further opportunity to create residential builds there. They recommend we look at our parking standards for both residential and commercial developments. In some cases where we have large amounts of parking available or large municipal owned lots, maybe those are properties that in the future could be suitable to take away a portion of that parking and look at a attainable or affordable housing build in line with the community improvement plan in that regard. They recommended that we track our vacancy rates both at the housing level and the commercial levels. They also recommended that we look at criteria in some cases in your own municipal official plans that might give council and staff some guidance as to when you could look at commercial conversions to residential uses. With respect to the community improvement plans themselves, they recommended, of course, that the plans be reviewed regularly. So that would be both the template document at the county level, but your own municipal community improvement plans, just to make sure that they're still meeting the goals and objectives that our individual councils were hoping for when they first passed those documents. They recommended prioritization of funding within the community improvement plans, and that those priorities could evolve over time. So certainly what we're hearing from this table is that affordable and attainable housing is definitely a priority across the county, but it could be that in future years those priorities shift, and maybe there's other projects that need to be funded as well. They did recommend that when reviewing the community improvement plan applications, that municipalities consider having a wide range of people reviewing that, from your economic development staff to your planning staff to your building staff, just to offer that broad expertise there in looking at those applications. Based on some of the interviews with stakeholders, they did find that in some cases there was a lack of awareness about community improvement plan programs. So they recommended partnering with groups like business improvement associations or downtown associations, or maybe even the county's own business enterprise center, to try to make sure that these community improvement plan programs are marketed, and so that people that could be potential future applicants to these programs know that that money is available and have a clear understanding of how they might apply for that money. In this regard, they also recommended that at either the municipal or county level, we consider offering support to people to help apply for those applications. In some cases, some people might not be used to filling out funding applications. So if there was any support that could be offered from a staff perspective to offer those wraparound services, that could certainly be useful in that regard. And finally, they also recommended that we municipalities consider conducting audits of the impact of their community improvement plans and the funding opportunities. And so I believe a couple meetings ago at this committee, there was a graphic presented that showed the impact that different programs at the county and municipal levels could have on a affordable housing build if you were looking at surplus municipal lands. So just making sure that, if you stack some of those incentives, do we have sufficient monies available to really make an impact to try to take some of these projects that might not otherwise be built and move them into the sort of doable category, if you will. So just as a follow-up to some of the questions we heard this morning, there was a question with respect to short-term accommodations as well. And I know this was raised when we presented this report initially at County Committee of the Whole. It was interesting, one landlord did mention that maybe the county should look at opportunities for short-term accommodations in our downtowns, in some of those residential spaces, as a mechanism by which to bring in more income for the landlords on some of their units, in hopes that they could incent lower rents on some of their other residential units. I will say this was only raised by one party, but it is an interesting proposal. So at this stage, staff are recommending that we bring forward a report to all of Committee of the Whole in January, just to share the news of this project. And that report will be recommending that we share these recommendations with both municipal planning and economic development staff. And we look at collectively trying to implement some of the recommendations at both the county and municipal levels in that regard. So that's a very quick high-level overview, but certainly be happy to take any questions if there are any.
Scott, I know in Grey Highlands we take advantage of that CIP and probably familiar with Michelle, and maybe she's spoken to you about how we've had it quite successful from the money that came from the county and money that we put into it. Questions, comments? It sounds like you've had this discussion already today, so maybe you've got other questions already. Certainly it's an incentive that helps. And I like that idea about maybe short term, just to get people exposed to your downtown. I don't know. It is an interesting concept for sure. No other comments then? Madam Clerk, do we need a motion to receive or the minutes are captured?
No, we're good.
Minutes are captured that? Okay. Well, there's no other questions, Scott, so thank you. Oh, Councillor O'Leary has a question.
Mr. Chair, I just have something else I wanted to ask on other business. Is that okay?
Well, yeah, we can get that. We have one more housing and homeless service in Ontario policy brief. So after that, we can entertain that for sure.
Yep.
Okay, Scott, there's no comments. So thank you very much for that. So the next one is housing and homeless service in Ontario policy brief. Is this you, Anne-Marie? Okay,
It
go ahead.
is. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I did actually put this in the first few slides of my presentation, but I did want it to bring to people's attention just some of the pressures that are on our housing system, and as a system service manager, some of the consultations that are happening to modernize our housing system at the provincial level, and I would be happy to answer any questions on it. If anyone has any.
Okay. Any questions then from committee? All right, I guess you answer them all. Everybody knows they can always follow up with Anne-Marie if they have a question at any time, right? So very good. Okay, Councillor O'Leary, you had other issue you wish to bring.
Yeah, I just wanted to, I made a motion at our council on offering 8th Street property to the county for affordable or attainable housing. And I thought we might be having a discussion here or at council or somewhere, and it was just a flat out no. So I don't know if I'm asking Randy, like what happened with that? Was just not interested or what?
Yeah, thank you, Chair McQueen. So based on that discussion, so we did take a look at that property. We did have some discussions with city staff, and it was a property that was brought to our attention by city staff to look at as a potential surplus land site that the city currently owns. It has an old reservoir on the property. That reservoir would have to be removed as part of any future development plans for the lands itself. Based on the current zoning provisions of that property, it only allows for the maximum in terms of residential type is a townhouse units. So it would allow for singles, semi-detached and townhouse units. Anything beyond that would require planning approvals. My understanding and our understanding based on discussions with city staff is that they're based on some of the surrounding land uses, there was concerns about going anything beyond townhouses. Based on our current wait list, in terms of an affordable housing build, like our current wait list as Anne-Marie presented earlier today, is more single bedroom apartment type units. So an apartment building structure wouldn't be permitted on that property. For those reasons, it wouldn't meet the current waiting list, but we think it's an opportunity still to add to the surplus land bank as a private development opportunity through either a CIP incentive program, if the city's of course interested, because it's the city's property. But we see more opportunity on the private CIP incentivized development as opposed to on the attainable housing side, as opposed to what Anne-Marie was presenting as an affordable housing apartment rental build, just based on the current planning permissions and the surrounding land uses of that property. So that's based on our analysis, and I don't know if there's anything further that Kim or Anne-Marie want to provide, but that was based on our preliminary analysis anyways, is looking at that potential property as for a future either affordable or attainable housing build. We think it's more suited for an attainable housing build project.
Okay, fair enough. Thanks, Randy.
No
That's
problem.
not, you're not referring to the old jail property, are you?
No, this is a property that's it's actually right beside the property or near the property that used to sell Christmas trees in town, because I remember buying Christmas trees as a kid. So the Walker's Christmas trees, if anyone knows that as a landmark. So it's just up the road from that. There's a house that separates where the Walker's Christmas trees were, the other house, and then there's the old reservoir property right beside that, right on 8th Street as you're going down the hill towards the downtown core. So it's so that's where that property is located.
So could the old jail property, does Owen Sound still own that, or who owns that now?
Yeah, my understanding is City of Owen Sound still owns that property.
I always thought that was a unique piece of property. I don't know. Is it for sale, Councilor?
You can have it. It's free. It is good. It is good. It would be perfect property, but it's going to cost a lot of money for the tear down.
Okay. All right.
It's a long story. We're not getting into that right now.
No. I just every time I drive by, I think it's a unique piece of property, but yeah. Okay, so that takes care of other business. Our next meeting. Yeah, obviously in the new year.
We'll look at dates moving forward and work with Anne Marie and Randy on agenda items, and we'll send some dates out to the members in the new year.
Can I say, does it make sense if we waited until February, we would be through budget. We would have the preliminary report from the consultants about Durham. And it would give you, Anne Marie, time to do a little bit more work with the various other groups, right? So if that's okay with folks, if we kind of look at the beginning of February as a time frame? Okay, good.
Councilor O'Leary?
Mr. Chair, we have some work to do too. There's 5 of us here that agreed to this, and if we do our jobs here, we'll be able to get this done.
Okay, well, thank you for that. I just wanted briefly, Councilor Swerver, did you want to speak to your attainable housing project, just how things are moving along in Blue Mountains? It is for housing itself, right?
Yeah, this is for attainable housing, so I can give you a brief update that we are looking at the site. We've had a design task force. Right now, we're fighting what I call social apartheid. People would like to now have people live in Owen Sound and commute in with the Grey County bus service. Some people. So there's a small minority in the community, and I'm sure I'm going to get into trouble once this gets out that I said they're promoting social apartheid, but that's what's going on. So right now we've asked, we've got the design committee. We're going out for request for qualification for builders. And then we are entering into the planning process because right now it only allows 3 stories. We had talked about anywhere from 3 to 5. It appears the consensus is that people might be accept 4, but you know, it's amazing when you talk about attainable housing, then everybody's for it. And then when you start moving forward on it, then all kinds of people come out of the woodwork and say, well, no, not in my backyard. So that's what's going on. We're going to push this thing forward, and we may not end up being the most popular politicians, but that doesn't really matter. We will build it, and we've already about 70 people that have applied to go on the waiting list. And that's in, I guess, a month's time. And, you know, it's still a couple of years in the future. So these are people that work in town. One of the requirements is you got to work 30 hours a week in the town of the Blue Mountains. And it's really targeted at that income range from anywhere from 30 to up to 100,000 of family income. Because right now you can't buy anything for under 700,000 in the town of Blue Mountains. So there is a real shortage of workers in retail. Even dentists are having trouble keeping office staff because, you know, there's just nowhere for them to live. We also anticipate issues with even young police constables. Like on a constable's salary, they can't afford to buy anything in the town of Blue Mountains. And we would hope that, you know, our police officers could live here and get to know the community rather than driving in from somewhere else. And, you know, Meaford is seeing the same increase in property values. So it's very important, but we are pushing ahead, and we expect we'll be through the planning process by mid-year at least. So.
Okay, well, thanks for that update. And it's good that you're providing something for the Blue Mountains for sure. Okay, so I need one more motion. Councilor Warden Hicks, adjournment. Councilor Burley, second. All in favor of that? That is carried. Good meeting, everyone. And thank you for, again, allowing me to be your chairman. And everybody have a good Christmas and have a safe one.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Thank
Merry
you.
Christmas.
Merry Christmas.